it was amazing to watch it with the family and share it with them and get their approval and see Ziggy, see the importance of his father's message and this another vehicle for that message. As you said, in a time when we need this message more than ever.
James, what a phenomenal movie. Look, I feel like for everything that's going on in the world, this is the perfect movie at the perfect time. You play Chris Blackwell, who is the founder of Violin Records. Can you talk to me a little bit about Chris's and Bob's relationship?
They had a great business, but also they have a great, they had a great affection for one another and a trust. I mean, Chris has been described as like the guy who brought reggae to the world. He's huge. He represented like Jimmy Cliff, Peter Tosh. Like, it wasn't just Bob, who he, obviously he lives and breathes that country and that music. So for him, Bob Marley is the ultimate kind of artist. And I think, in his book, he has like a whole chapter dedicated to Bob Marley. They clearly went very deep. And in terms of Bob's relationship with Chris, I guess there was a trust there from the very beginning. I love the story about how when Bob and Peter and Bunny walked into Chris's office and they were just like, listen, we're the real deal and we want to record an album. And Chris gave them £4,000 and just said, go record. And all the people at Island Records like, what are you doing? This is insane, And so I think that moment from the very beginning of their relationship, that moment of trust and belief, based on instinct, based on a vibe. I don't think he'd heard much of their tunes, really. So that really started them off on this journey. And one thing which struck me in the book was that Chris talked about how Bob and him didn't often chat loads. It wasn't like they were kind of talking about gossip or family stuff. But what they did do is they sat a lot in silence. They were able to kind of be in one another's presence but not require conversation. And for me, that shows a real intimacy.
You had a front row seat to seeing Kingsley Ben-Adir transform into Bob Marley. What surprised you the most about working with Kingsley and his approach to the role? I
mean, honestly, it was something to behold. The way that guy, the depth of his work and his commitment was insane. I mean, I met him a couple of times before we got to rehearsals, but then when we were in rehearsals, I remember the first day, and he was kind of speaking to everyone, and he's a leader. He's not just a kind of cast member. The first number one in the call sheet is the kind of the head of that department, and he really lived and breathed that role, not just in terms of the cast, but in the movie. He fought and he really believed in a version of this story which was about the kind of quieter inner journey of this man. And he fought for that, and he rightfully so, and that's what a lot of this movie is on Kingsley's shoulders. He must take responsibility for that. But yeah, I mean, the guy, like, I have never seen an actor work so hard and so thoroughly and be so possessed. We were sitting there on the first day of rehearsals, and he was kind of giving us this speech. Really, he was like, "This film needs to be this. This is what I need this story to carry this message." And then in the middle of talking as Kingsley, he would just seamlessly switch into Bob's voice and start speaking kind of patois and be almost like, it was like watching a man kind of become possessed and enter into this other headspace, and then 2-3 minutes of speaking, not scripted, just Bob's voice, but if when you're speaking patois and you don't, if Kingsley had learned that, it was insane. And he'd come back into Kingsley. The guy is a genius. I will follow him into any movie, any situation. Yeah, he's
so incredible. Now, you got to meet the real Chris Blackwell. With your discussions with him, how did he kind of inform your character with this film?
We tried to reach out and meet before the movie, and schedules and life, because he's a busy man. I was, everything else happened. So I actually only got to meet him properly after.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But what I did have throughout the movie was, we had the family. We had Ziggy, obviously, on set every single day. Neville Garrick was a massive help for me because he and Chris have been friends for years. Sadly, really sadly, Neville passed away just before the movie was released, but he did get to see a cut, which is the best, because that man was such a life and soul of our movie. He just having those guys there, both in terms of just the references and the advice, the historical advice was brilliant, but it was a bigger, more profound presence. We had Bob, we had Bob's son who looks like Bob, and Neville, and so for me that was an invaluable resource, because I was obviously I had Neville just in my ear saying, "This is Chris," and occasionally I'd walk out of my trailer wearing like my flip flops and you know that kind of the tracksuit I'd worn in just to show, and he'd be like, "That's Chris." You know, he would always sort of find me in my most dishevelled and go, "That's my boy. That's the guy I know." So it was lovely to have that. And then I met Chris obviously at the premiere, and it was terrifying. Obviously, you know, playing someone is nerve-wracking anyway when they're alive. And then when they're in the theatre with you, watching you play them, and also someone, I don't know whether it's a joke, but they positioned Chris in front of me, like one row in front. So I had the guy, I could see his profile watching me play him. So obviously I spent most of the movie looking at him, not the film. But he was very sweet, and we chatted afterwards, and I sort of said, "Sorry, was that okay? Hopefully, are we good?" And he was great. I mean, I cannot imagine what it must be like for him. And Rita was there. You know, Rita was there watching. Incredible. It was amazing to watch it with the family and share it with them and get their approval and see Ziggy, see the importance of his father's message and this another vehicle for that message. As you said, in a time when we need this message more than ever. So
couldn't agree with you more. And I love this film because it's a side of Bob Marley that you just can't like Google and find. You know what I mean? And congratulations, the film's fantastic. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. No, cheers, man.
I appreciate you.
Likewise.